As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICAN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized CIMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a CIMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICAN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the CIMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study Exam. Start studying the CIMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Tax being a compulsory exertion by government on the citizen is actually regulated by statutes, in which case citizens are really to comply with the laws of the land. And also, when there's a liability, you know definitely that you need to pay your tax. Good evening, my distinguished colleagues and friends of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Today is the 18th day of January 2024, and we'll be discussing the topic today: assessing the progress of reforms in the Nigerian tax system. We have a special guest in the house, and I guess we have to go on a break, on a commercial, before I bring in our special guest into the studio. And our special guest today, just let one or two people know about the special guest we have talking about tax. Is all about taxes today and the reforms of the Nigerian government. Mr. Kilian Kanoba, FCA, is a partner at Christine Pedabo Accounting and Tax Firm. But we'd like to go on a break and we'll be right back.
As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICAN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized CIMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a CIMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICAN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the CIMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study Exam. Start studying the CIMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact. As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICAN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized CIMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a CIMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICAN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the CIMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study Exam. Start studying the CIMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Okay, you're welcome back to ICAN on Air today, the 18th day of January 2024. My name remains Fumi Olani ACA, and I'm very glad to be here today, anchoring this program and bringing to your doorstep all you need to know about the Nigerian tax system and the reforms that the government has put in place. Before we went on the break, I told you we have a distinguished guest in the house in person of Mr. Kilian Kanoba, FCA. He's a senior partner with Creston Pedabo and is involved in service delivery to clients in telecommunications, information technology, oil and gas, and so on. He became an associate of the Institute in 2001. Now he's a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. He got his master's degree at the Ambrose Ali University in 2005, and he commenced his work career with the firm Ijewere and Co. Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. And he was a trainee at in Kaduna office, where he rose to become the manager in charge of the firm's upcountry operations. So his industry experience spans across oil and gas, manufacturing, telecommunication, financial services, not-for-profits, and also HNIs. Mr. Kilian has attended a number of professional courses, both locally and internationally, in the course of his career. He has also served as a resource person at various training in Nigerian taxation. Mr. Kilian, like we all know, or perhaps we need to know, is happily married with children. Thank you so much, sir, for being here today.
Thank you, Fumi. It's my pleasure to be here with you and with all. Yeah.
All right. I mean, the topic is not strange to you because it's something that you are always doing. I see you on the platforms, I see you at conferences, and I see how you deliver these things called tax. So what I would say, my question to you, sir, is, in your assessments and evaluations, when you think about the tools for comparing the planned goals versus the real achievements that we see, what would you say? Whenever the word tax is mentioned, apart from government, lots of individuals and corporate citizens develop the goosebumps or chill bumps. Why do you think so? Why do you think people are always skeptical when they hear the word tax?
Yeah, thanks for me. Interestingly, there is, amongst the so many phobias that you have, there is actually a phobia for tax. It's known as phorosophobia, which is the fear of tax and the tax authority. Of course, derived from the Greek word tax being the Greek word, phoros being the Greek word for tax. But again, on a more serious note, tax is serious business, and everybody knows it's a serious matter. So everybody is very mindful. Even for us practitioners, we are mindful when it becomes our personal tax matters. Everybody is mindful. Tax is defined as a compulsory payment, okay, that is levied on you by law. So it's not something you pay to get a service in return. It's not something you pay to get goods in return. So you go to the supermarket, you spend a lot of money, you come back home, you look at your basket, you can see how much you have shopped, You pay a flight ticket and you jump on the plane and you go around the world. You know how much you have spent and you feel good about it. You don't feel bad. But in the case of tax, that satisfaction, whether intrinsic or tangible, it's not very easily measured. Moreover, it's imposed on you by law, so you don't really have a choice. You can't say this is what I have paid for, and you just pay the money, and other people decide what to do with it. So that's one. Secondly, because it's a matter of law, it now means that there is a thin line between doing the right thing and committing an offense and committing a crime. So if you do tax wrongly, you pay much more than the tax you should have paid. And in some countries, you probably could even end up in prison. So when people hear tax, they get scared, or at least they get concerned. As practitioners will say, don't be scared, don't be afraid. be concerned, be interested, but don't be afraid. Mainly because there are ways to doing it, and there are ways to doing it fine. Thank you.
Interesting response. I mean, practitioners will always calm you down and say, "Don't worry, it's not the end of the world. We can always respond." Thank you. But there are reforms. Reforms are meant to be welcomed with open arms, especially in a country like Nigeria. But the phrase tax reform is generally viewed as government trick or strategy to exploit Nigerians through the introduction of additional tax burden. What could be the reason for such skepticism in people or in Nigerians, perhaps?
Yeah, in a single word, I would say mistrust. Okay, mistrust or lack of trust. That's the summary of it. Mainly because between the people and the government, between the governed and the governed, and the government, there is that social contract, and everybody is supposed to fulfill his part. You pay your tax, and the government provides basic social services to everybody, which is the purpose of paying tax. But you find out that in some jurisdictions, probably such as ours, that is always not there. So there's no, people feel that government collect the taxes, and they feel that government does not account. So that concern is usually there. But if you also look at past reforms, how have past reforms been managed? What did they really improve? How have they been measured to confirm whether they were successful or not? If you look at the way reforms have been, tax reforms especially, have been executed in Nigeria, you will see that they've been more vertical rather than lateral. So you don't have the net being widened deliberately. Instead, those who are already in the net tend to get taxed much more, while those who are out of it are able to stay out of it successfully. And so there is this issue of why me all the time. As practitioners, we see that. And the taxpayer will ask you, am I the only one? What about the other people? They are not paying. So each time the government moots reforms, there is that apprehension. Oh, they have come again. There's a new tax that is being added. Even though we know that may not necessarily be the case, but that is the general perception that you have. A lot of taxpayers also believe that reforms are just about increasing tax revenue. Okay, but there should be other aspects to reform. There should be the taxpayers' aspects of reforms, which is how do you make life easier for the taxpayer? How do you build trust between the taxpayer and the tax authorities, between the taxpayer and the administrators of government and the people in charge of government? How do you make how do you reform the system such that payment of taxes will not just be easy, but become even more and more voluntary? These are some of the reasons why people get apprehensive with tax reforms. Take, for example, I'll give you one simple example. In 2020, with the Finance Act, there was this change in the minimum tax, the basis for determining minimum tax. And then all of this, because people have complained all along that why are you taxing capital because of the structure? Why are you taxing capital? Why not wait until profits are earned? And then of course it was reformed. Everybody was happy. But there was an aspect of it that a lot of people did not realize, where the base for minimum tax was not changed from all the usual complex the then complex way to say, okay, we'll just take 0.5% of the turnover of the company. And that looked good. But for some industries, it wasn't. They are actually worse off than they used to be. There are companies that barely make, let's say, 5% margin on their revenue. Okay, before you even talk about operating expenses to know whether they will make a profit. So even if you look at the margin, the PBT rate of that company against turnover, probably maybe 1%. And then here you have taken half of that in the name of tax. So yes, it looks like a welcome development, but for some people, they will see it as no, that there is nothing good in that. We probably were better if you were making us pay tax in that manner. Yeah, and when you compare that with what happens in some other jurisdictions that operate the minimum tax system, where yes, you pay a minimum tax if you don't make a profit, but in future when you make a profit, they allow you to recoup that. So it's just like an advance payment, which is not the case here. So that's why people are usually very concerned whenever government talks about reforming the tax system, mainly because
the trust system. Well said, sir. I would like to recognize some of our audience here. I see over here my manual. It says is welcoming us to the program today. Stephen Offer, thank you so much for being here. Streaming live from River State, we have Enamerame Tamad Rodo. Thank you so much for joining. Toyosi Abayomi, thank you so much. I see Ibukun. I see all of you. We say thank you so much for being part of the program. Please tell a friend to join the program. Onyema Emmanuel, will see you all the time. Abdul Bello, thank you. Fatbalate Mitokwe, he says it's streaming live from Ibadan. Thank you very much. I hope you're safe and sound in Ibadan. Thank you for checking up on us. All right, sir, going to the next question. You know, as part of the macroeconomics transformation and the tax administration reforms, we've had a lot of it on the company's income tax, on the personal income tax, VAT, PPT, capital gains tax, a lot of them that has been reenacted. So looking back today, did the reform achieve the desired objectives? If yes, how would you say it did so? I mean, why? Why would you conclude so?
Thank you very much. I think this is another very interesting question, really. Our tax system, we've had a plethora of reforms of our tax system over the last few decades. But I think the reform activities in the tax system has actually been much more intensive, probably from in the last 3-4 years, especially with the introduction of the Finance Act, that has now been used as an opportunity to take a review of the tax system, the tax laws, and review them from time to time. But even if we cast our mind back beyond that, we'll see that some of these taxes were introduced over a period of time, right from the Income Tax Management Act of so many years that was replaced by the PIT and the CETA, and then also with the introduction of the value-added tax and all of that. So I think the best way to measure is to look at what was the objective originally for each of these reforms. And also there's a need to look at what perspective are you viewing it from? Are we viewing it from the perspective of the tax authorities or from the perspective of the people in charge of economic planning or the perspective of the taxpayers themselves? Some will say it has worked. Obviously, on the part of government, I would say that the recent reforms have been majorly successful. The FRS, for example, will attest to that fact. Revenues have risen, or collections have risen from, I think in 2018, from about 6 trillion. Now, I think last year we hear that there was even, they even raised up to 13 trillion. So that's a tremendous success of the reforms, you would say. And from the perspective of the taxpayer, probably, yeah, there are good testimonies. There's a lot more ease in compliance. Tax returns are more easily filed online. Payments are also online. Disputes can even be resolved online now without you even having to go to the tax offices. Across the states too, even returns are being filed online in some states. Some states are also even issuing electronic tax certificates, which is, of course, we still have a lot who are still doing things the old way. Reforms, maybe I will not talk very much about the states because they seem to be quite divorced from what is happening, with the exception of a couple of states, Lagos being one of them, and a few others. So, but when we look at the downside to the various reforms that have happened, there are a few downsides. First is with the Finance Act, for example, they seem to have happened in very quick succession. And I recall that at some fora, you hear some colleagues say, what is the new Finance Act saying? We have not finished learning, understanding the last one. Now you have come with a new one. So people are now playing catch up, except for fortunate people like us who work in firms that have got capacity to have resource to manage the research function and help to keep everybody abreast. But a lot of people have been struggling to catch up. Then you also have the issue of language. Some of the laws, for example, have been written in language that leaves you in doubt rather than give clarity. So this is what the law is, right? This is what is written in the law. The practitioner or the taxpayer says, oh, this is the interpretation, which means it is favorable and is happy. It goes to the tax office, the taxman says, no, you need to read it again. Meanwhile, everybody thought the objective of the reform was to make things easier and clearer. So we still have a few of those situations. Then, you also look at the earmark taxes, for example. A lot of them have suddenly come in. So while we are complaining that we have multiplicity of taxes, we have reforms that are actually introducing new taxes and levies. So you have the Naseni levy. Before, we only used to have the tertiary education tax. Now you also have Naseni, you have Nigerian police fund levy, you have the NIDA levy. But people still look again and say, how have these levies actually improved on the sectors for which these revenues are being collected? So assessing the reforms really, it depends on whose eyes from which you are viewing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. I mean, I had some other reforms and initiatives that I would have wanted to ask you about, but it's okay. You've mentioned a few of them, so there's no need delving into that again, because of course, all we need is what these reforms have done for Nigeria. But according to some technocrats, the principal challenges of tax reform in Nigeria are the non-availability of these statistics. There's inability to prioritize the tax effort, there's poor tax administration, and sometimes, like I've mentioned, there's multiplicity of taxes. So many believe that the big elephant in the room is corruption. Am I right to say that, or am I wrong, sir?
Yeah, that's a big question. Unfortunately, I personally believe that the big elephant in the room is not necessarily corruption. Indeed, corruption is one of the factors that is responsible for the slow pace of development in every aspect of our nation, actually, tax not being an exception. But I think it's not a major problem. Personally, I believe that the major problem really is who is at the center of our policies. Okay, who is at the center of our policies, or what is at the center of our policies? I personally believe that until you put the Nigerian, the Nigerian person, the Nigerian masses, the Nigerian people at the center of every policy, it's likely going to fail. Okay, and so if revenue generation is this major focus of our tax policies, then you definitely have these issues, and corruption. You will not be able to help corruption. You will not be able to help having all of this as part of it. But if you put the people at the center, then every process that is being used to drive that policy is likely going to work better for you. Okay, so and because revenue generation is usually the focal point, even the tax official is under pressure, okay, to generate as much revenue as he can, even sometimes if it means uh, uh, breaking the rules himself, okay. And if meeting targets is the driving force, then you are going to see that laws will not be interpreted in a manner that makes doing business easier, but rather in a manner that maximizes revenue generation, even if it means stifling businesses. So, yes, I agree, corruption is a key factor, but corruption really is not major problem that we have. I think there is really a need to retune all public policy making in a manner that puts the Nigerian at the center. Thank you.
Okay. From your responses, we're neither here, or I mean, it's a great one to know that human factor really matters and the reforms must happen with the policies that are in place. So, it just takes me back to July 2023, where Mr. President approved the establishment of a presidential committee on fiscal policy and tax reforms. And one of the objectives of this policy is to achieve a commendable tax to GDP ratio of 18% in the next 3 years without actually stifling investment or economic growth. Would you give us your personal assessment on the journey so far?
Yeah, thank you. And this is actually one of the contemporary topics in the Nigerian tax, not just in Nigerian tax, but Nigerian business space since the coming of the new administration. And I think it is one of those steps that was taken by the president that was welcomed by the entire business community. And that is good, is because everybody recognizes the fact that there is a need to do something about our tax and fiscal policies. So, yeah, the committee was inaugurated, I think, in August, barely a month after it was constituted, 2023. And we know that they have since started work, and they've actually been working very intensely. Sometime before the end of last year, there was a submission of what they refer to as a quick wins report. And that quick wins report did highlight quite a few items that we expect or that we see the committee proposing to government to implement in order to open up the fiscal space and also bring to bear a lot of initiatives to make doing business in Nigeria a lot easier for investors and business owners. So yes, we expect that there will be changes both in the area of fiscal and monetary policies. We have started seeing some of them, starting with the removal of restriction on the 43 items that were banned from the foreign exchange market, which was given effect by the central bank before the end of last year. We also saw the suspension of VAT on diesel, because it really obviously didn't make much sense if you say you want to control cost of manufacturing. You have removed subsidies, at least remove taxes too, so that the prices will not have to jump very high. There were a couple of other initiatives that were in that report, which were directed at the Federal Revenue Service, And I think we also saw those initiatives being implemented almost immediately. So, but I think the expectation is that there will be more ground moving proposals coming in the subsequent report. But apart from that, people also are waiting to see government implement all the other items in the Quick Wins report.
Yes.
From my personal evaluation, I think things are moving in the right direction in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I mean, thank you so much for saying that. Things are moving in the right direction. So far, so good. So we'd like to go on a commercial break, and it's still ICAN on Air today, and we're happy that every one of you have actually gathered your families, your friends, every member of Chartered Institute of Accountants, and even friends to listen to today's topic. We still have Mr. Killian Kanoba in the studio, and we'll be right back after the break.
In a world of endless possibilities, where innovation meets collaboration and experience is the standard, get ready for the most prestigious event in the world of accounting and finance. The 18th edition of the Western Zonal Accountant Conference, Ibadan 2024, themed Economic Resilience, Navigating the Bottlenecks. This year's conference is packed with engaging sessions, expert speakers, and unparalleled networking opportunities. Mark your calendars. The conference is set to hold from Wednesday 31st of January to Saturday 3rd of February 2024. Venue is All of Grace Jogos Center, Liberty Road, Ibadan. The conference will feature a variety of speakers and topics, including unlocking the potentials of professional accountants in a volatile economy, accounting theory and practice, navigating the challenges of accounting practice, accounting as a driving force for business sustainability. Please note that for physical participants, registration fee is 40,000 naira for members and 45,000 naira for non-members. For virtual participants and for young accountants, registration fee is 30,000 naira. For more information and to register, please go to www.icanwesternzonalevent.org.ng, and for inquiries, call 0803 959 2838 or 0803 579 7087. 18th Western Zonal Accountants Conference, Ibadan 2024, where knowledge meets innovation.
Ọmọ ẹni ò ṣe di bẹ̀bẹ̀rẹ̀, àkànkẹ́ àndé mi Melissa, káfílẹ̀kẹ̀ sídìí ọmọ ẹlòmíì, àyìndé wá sí tẹnitẹni. Bàǹdà kásá, fọ́ọ̀mà ní fowó ṣe o. Bàǹdà kásá, fọ́ọ̀mà ní fowó ṣe o. Banda casa, como anito oṣù. Bẹ́ẹ̀ni ṣàyíjọ́ fújì torí àdìgbò pọ̀pọ̀ níbi. Ṣàyíjọ́ fújì. Bẹ́ẹ̀ni ṣàyíjọ́ fújì o. Bẹ́ẹ̀ni ṣàyíjọ́ fújì torí àdìgbò púpọ̀ nínú tẹ́lẹ̀ ṣàyíjọ́.
Okay, still Icon on Air today, and we're very excited about the topic for today because it resonates with every one of us. We all pay our taxes, right? Am I sure? Yes, accountants pay their taxes. I don't know about you, non-accountants in the house. So today we're discussing assessing the progress of reform in the Nigerian tax system, and we have in the studio Mr. Kilian Kanoba, FCA. Thank you so much so far for how you've been delving into these questions and giving us all of the very succinct answers. But before we went on the break, Sal, we talked about the reforms, the one initiated by Mr. President, the committee. But what quick wins do you expect from the tax reforms committee that can have a significant and immediate positive impact on the economy, sir?
Yeah, there are quite a few. Again, for me, the most important wins may not necessarily be quick ones, because since there is really nothing quick that is usually very sustainable. There is always the risk that you may not have put the necessary building blocks before you mount that win. So what you call a win may just be overturned for you subsequently. But personally, I look at the quick wins that have been recommended, and I need to also I think there is an aspect that may not have been looked at, which is the aspect that has to do with the mainstay of our economy, the petroleum industry. Right now, as a country, we have removed the subsidy on petroleum products. But I expect that we should have removed, if possible, all the taxes and levies that are also generated by government from the supply of petroleum products, so that we know that our exposure will be mainly the international cost of the products, while the local costs are eliminated to the barest minimum. Apart from the removal of VAT on diesel, I didn't really see that for an economy that has had to adjust forcefully from a market price of less than 200 naira per liter of petrol to currently as high as 650 naira in some parts of the country. I think that was missed out. I don't know why. The fact that they recognized that of diesel, I'm sure, was mainly because we are looking at the fact that diesel impacts more on industries. But I think we also ought to have also looked at the aspect that directly impacts on the individuals. So there may be quite a few, but I actually think our biggest issues in terms of tax reform for me, like I've said, is that we do not focus on the individual. If you look at the structure of our tax revenue, for example, our corporate tax revenues rank about, I think, 30 or 35% of our total tax collections. Okay, look at the tax that we impose on what do we generate from taxing individuals? Just about 10 or 11%. Now, if you benchmark this against what happens in the more developed economies, you will see that the reverse is the case. Taxes from individuals are higher in terms of quantum than what is collected from corporates. And it's for a simple reason. Corporates are expected to create wealth, okay? And individuals are supposed to derive their own wealth from corporates, either by way of employment income, by way of investment income, or by way of providing services to the corporates. And in turn, when the people are enriched, then the people can be taxed. Okay, but what we have is, because it is easier to collect money from the corporate because they are fewer,
Yes.
they seem to be put at the center of our tax system. And that for me is not sustainable, and it does not help to grow our economy.
I think before
So,
you land, sorry to interrupt, sir. I think I want to ask these questions because it's part of the reforms. My question is, how confident are you that the recommendations of this tax reforms committee will be implemented rather than just gathering dust as some reform recommendations have experienced over the time?
Yeah, I would prefer not to be pessimistic. Okay, I would rather not dampen hopes. I would prefer that we are all hopeful. But yes, the observations are quite right. There are hurdles definitely which will have to be crossed. One of which is mainly the provisions in our constitution. Okay, and that is probably one of the major reasons why we have the situation I have just observed. We run a federal system with 3 tiers of government. Each tier has got a role to play. Okay, and there's no way the presidential committee can make their wishes come true without going through the National Assembly, without going through the state houses of assembly. We know how difficult it is to amend the constitution in Nigeria. We know how many attempts have been made by the various assemblies, and none of which ever succeeded till the end of their tenure. So on that note, I see that as a major landmine, which frankly, I do not know how the committee are hoping to navigate around.
All right, thank you, sir. But I'm still going to latch on the last question. Despite the ongoing reforms in the Nigerian tax system, we see that the 2024 budget is showing that there are there are heavy reliance on borrowing to finance public spendings, which could limit the fiscal space and also hinder some socio-economic development. What does that say about the effectiveness of the reforms we have in mind? I think you're muted, sir.
Sincere apologies. I was saying that I'm not an economist and I do not arrogate that expertise to myself. But we all understand some basic economics. We are not experts, but we do understand some basic economics. But if we look at our budget profile over the last few years, compare 2023 with 2024 budgets. In 2023, I think we budgeted a total of 11 trillion for revenue. Okay, in 2024, we are budgeting 18 trillion. That's a leap of almost 70% or thereabout. Okay, if you look at our expenditure, our recurrent expenditure currently for the 2024 budget, when you add that to the debt service costs, you will see that it more or less matches our projected revenue. Now, in my own assessment, I think that is not bad because it means that whatever we are borrowing will be towards spending on our capital projects. So I think that is not a very bad way to start, even though it would have been even better if we make more revenue to at least contribute partly to the meeting of our capital expenditure. So, but it's not a bad thing if you look at what happens globally. Every country borrows to spend on capital expenditure. As long as what we are borrowing to spend on, it's something that is sustainable, something that can repay itself, I would say that we are not in a very bad place. I don't think taxation is the be it all and end all for economic success or sustainability. And that is what we need to also let our policymakers know. No country has ever taxed itself to prosperity. Okay? Excessive taxation actually leads to poverty because by the time you tax out everybody and then you leave people with very little disposable income, then you may not be doing the economy well. So I think the reforms vis-a-vis the projections for 2024, I think they are in tandem. I don't think they are really at cross purpose in any way. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Although I would have wanted to ask you more questions concerning that, but let me just hold on for my audience to ask all the relevant questions in that regard, because I saw Fagbala Temitope saying all this finance act from year to year, is it a pain or a gain? But I know that you've mentioned something relating to that. There's always a positive side of it. So yeah, we can. But please get your questions ready. We have Mr. Killian Kanoba. He's an expert in tax because I've seen him on different platforms discussing this matter with passion. So, sir, technology and automation can help us improve the creativity of the citizens and even boost the productivity capacity of the nation. But sir, to what extent has the ongoing reform consolidated the country's taxes in order to actually simplify the process of tax compliance that we have now? I mean, we need to digitize. We always talk about digitalization, but to what extent do you think this committee have done that? You're muted, sir.
Yeah, apologies again. I really don't. I don't think the intention is really to consolidate because Nigeria is still replete with multiple taxations. Multiple taxes all over the place. So there really has not been consolidation. What I think the reforms have actually helped to achieve is via the use of technology, you now have consolidation of platforms. Okay, so tax returns are now very easily filed and processed using one platform. So there's been a lot of automation of the processes, especially at the Federal Inland Revenue Service level. Payments have also been very highly automated. Now you can pay tax with your card from your home, even on a weekend. So it's you even though, like, take for example, this month, the VAT returns are due by the 21st, which is Sunday. Okay, a lot of people are going to have to rush to process and file their returns by tomorrow at the latest, so that they don't run late. But frankly, unless the networks disappoint or the system crashes, you can choose to wait until Sunday and do it at home. You don't have to necessarily take it to the tax office. So I think what the reforms have done for me, as far as technology is concerned, is to consolidate the platforms. In fact, I was in a room I think in November or so, where a particular platform was being discussed and that is being deployed to various states internal revenue service, such that a company can actually pay its withholding tax that is distributed across various states in Nigeria using just one schedule, by just populating the schedule with the appropriate information. It doesn't have to file the returns at different places, sending it to different platforms. So yes, you may not have consolidated the taxes, but you have been able to create platforms that enable you to process payments and tax returns using a platform that is consolidated.
Okay, nice one. Thank you so much, sir. We've been talking about the reforms done by Mr. President, the committee put in place. But you know that till date, before then, right, we'll say that Nigeria is still suffering from the business climate hostilities, and there seems to be no ease of doing business. What is the way forward? But of course, I want you to also let us know. I mean, to encourage and attract genuine investment, governments must be ready to address certain or concerns or cost of energy, multiple taxes, road infrastructure. Do we see Mr. President's Reform Committee addressing some of these highlighted concerns, in your own opinion, sir?
Absolutely, in my opinion. I think the presidential committee is already addressing most of these issues. Again, the committee is just an advisory committee. It is at the end of the day, the buck stops on the president's table, and the president, of course, is likely to pass it on to the National Assembly for the amendment of laws and the like. But I think the major issue really has to do, like I have highlighted earlier, what the big obstacle I expect to be for them or for the output of that committee. And that has to do with the legislative input that is required or the legislative actions that need to be taken for whatever they do to take effect. So that for me is an issue. But apart from that, there is also a need to work on the change of attitude of Nigerians, both as taxpayers and government officials and policy, not just policy. I mean, people who execute the laws at the end of the day, because our problems have never been from lack of laws. I think our problems have been more from implementing the laws in the way that the laws have been written. So I think you mentioned the issue of ease of doing business. If you look at the ease of doing business law that was enacted I think in February, that came into effect in February last year, a lot of beautiful things were there. But at the end of the day, you will see that most of those actions that have been codified in the law are actually still being observed in the breach. So that law, for example, says that you are supposed to submit your passport at one desk in the airport. But some of us still travel recently, and you will see that that's not the case. You still have to take your passport from one desk, you are cleared, and all over the world, all the places I have been to, it's only in Nigeria that we practice that. You go to the ports today, you will see that the number of agencies that are operating there are actually doing more damage than actually helping. So I think it's about the fact that we sometimes tend to obey laws. Very easily breach the provisions of laws than obey them. That's where the bane is really. It's not about making new laws, but there is also a need to begin to encourage our institutions to have a change in attitude and in focus.
All right, thanks, sir. So I saw a question from an audience, Nick Chinedu. He says, will it be possible and effective integrating the federal, the state, and the local government tax and levies to control double taxation? And he said, your view will be appreciated. Finally, what steps needs to be taken for these things to be implemented, sir?
Yeah, I think I touched on that briefly. Frankly, that is probably the most ideal situation you will have. I personally am an advocate of a unified tax system. Okay, especially for our country, I don't think we have got the ability to manage the sophistication that a federal tax system imposes on a country. While you have the federal tax authority way up there in terms of standard, the state tax authorities are still barely able to crawl. There is no synchronization of revenue collection. There is the incursion of non-state actors into revenue collection. So certainly, if we are able to unify the tax system, we are definitely going to be able to remove those incidences of double taxation and multiplicity of taxes that you see that keeps causing difficulties for our economy. How that can be achieved? Yes, I think I've mentioned it on a couple of occasions in this interview. You definitely need legislative action. You need to be able to amend the constitution where the state governments must be able to donate their powers to impose taxes. The local governments must be able to donate their powers to impose taxes and vest those powers in a central body, or at least in a central control body, such that everything that is done can be synchronized. I don't think there's a problem sharing the revenue. We are used to sharing FAC revenue already. So I don't think if all the revenues are collected in one pot, it will be difficult to share it.
Yes, I also know about the harmonization of taxes. So I think government is in the right direction in that regard, sir. Thank you for your response. But I want to particularly ask about the foreign direct investments. It does not appear to be rising. Now, diaspora remittance have actually shrunk too. And SMEs are growing, a lot of things are happening. There's high energy costs, there's national growth being stunted. And when you talk about insecurity, food security, everything is on the negative. Just for lack of a better word, what advice would you like to give the government, or what reforms do you think they can put in place to actually help that out immediately?
Yeah, I think this is a question that everybody in this room can answer. So we know what the problems are. We know we know what the solution should be, but we probably are incapable of implementing those solutions. So everything is left in the hands of government. The foreign direct investment, of course, have shrunk. Why? Mainly because of the uncertainties that have been created in our economy over time. The spate of criminality, violent crimes all over the country, certainly is one key factor that is responsible. You are having the issue of people are also not, the issue of diaspora remittances have also shrunk, clearly because a lot of people who normally will send money to execute projects back home are beginning not to do that because the more money that you send to your people seems to put them at the risk of kidnapping.
Okay.
Am I still on air?
Oh yes, you're back. You're back.
Rolling. Oh,
yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. So, yeah. So I think our problems are quite intertwined. Our economic problems, our security problems, our infrastructure problems, they are all intertwined, and I think solving them. Their solutions are not difficult they are quite fast. They are not far-fetched. Everybody knows what the solutions are. But I expect that with the new government and with all the advice that they are getting from the various committees that have been set up, that the appropriate steps will be taken to implement this and hopefully put our economy on the rebound again.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. We really do appreciate you for coming. That's about it on the program. Thank you so much to Mr. Kilian Kanoba. FCA is a partner at Creston Pedabo. We'll say thank you so much for coming. And we hope that the next time we'll call you, you'll be very available to answer our call, sir.
Thank you, Fumi, and to the team. It's my pleasure to
All right. Do have a restful evening, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you. I'd like to read some announcements because we're running out of time on the program already. I'll say thank you, everyone, for joining the program. It's always an exciting time to be here on ICAN on Air. So the announcement for today is the 9th Annual International Academic Conference on Accounting and Finance. It's an hybrid program that would come up 13th of February and up till the 15th of February. And the venue is the Babcock University. Also, we have the Western Zonal Conference coming up in Ibadan from the 31st of January to the 3rd of February 2024. Please register immediately. Thank you, everyone, once again for joining the program. And we hope that next week you'll be with us in the studio at 6 p.m. on ICAN on Air. My name remains Fumi Olani, and I'll say, do have a restful evening and pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility, and it is the law. Have yourself a restful evening. Thank you so much.